blip appeared, far too close to be the same object headed for Aquarius Station. "It's landing here!" "But they haven't signaled us." Apvane scrambled at his console controls. He brought up the visual from the surveillance camera outside the control center, just as something struck it and the picture dissolved into static. Frantic, he fumbled with his comm unit and tapped in Chief Morgan's code. "Chief," he said when his call was answered, "I think we've got trouble. Looks like there's a starship in orbit. A shuttle is headed toward Aquarius and someone just landed here." His jaw clenched as he listened to Morgan's reply. "I'm not playing some kind of practical joke," he snapped. "They just came in out of nowhere. No signals, no nothing. Someone is here. They might be pirates." Suddenly, the starship in orbit just disappeared from the screen, and the satellites registered a huge explosion. As Apvane was explaining that the starship appeared to have been destroyed, the door to the control center slammed open, and the two men jerked their attention to it. Hirsute's scream was cut short, becoming a gurgle as he collapsed. Cameron stared disconsolately into the small fire. Things had not been going well for him, not at all, since the group's arrival on Society 437 6 months ago. Opposite the fire, snuggled against the cave wall, Minerva stirred in her sleep. Her blonde hair, once so beautiful, was matted and dirty, as shaggy as the men's. She stank, too. They all did. None of them had spent much time on personal hygiene for months, but she was the only one of the surviving pirates Cameron could trust. The cave they were hiding in extended for uncounted kilometers under the mountains. They only used the first 100 meters or so of the tunnel system that led into the caverns, but they had explored extensively behind the entrance and were satisfied that the place might provide refuge if... Cameron didn't want to think about what if. He was sure their puny defensive measures would amount to nothing if those things did come after them in there. But he'd been careful not to share his thoughts with the others, for fear the tenuous grip he had on them would snap. From the shadows farther inside the cave, someone was pissing. Cameron could just make out Rye's Apback, leaning against the wall back there. "Rise," he shouted. "We have to live in here." "I'm not going outside at night, Georgie boy," Rise answered, shaking himself off. "Not with them things out there, no siree." Rise rearranged his clothes. "Thanks to you, Georgie boy," he added sourly. "You'd have been dead 6 months ago with the others if it hadn't been for me," Cameron replied in a tired voice. He was referring to Captain Scanlon and the 100 other members of the Red 35 crew, as the pirate gang had called itself. The surviving pirates blamed him for everything. True enough, it had been Cameron's idea to raid Society 437, but who could have imagined that those things... Cameron shook his head and got to his feet. Carefully, he negotiated his way up the steep tunnel through the sleeping figures littered around tiny fires. At the cave entrance, 2 men armed with the group's last functional plasma weapons, ancient relics even when Cameron was born, kept fitful watch. They crouched behind a barricade of small boulders, scanning the rock-strewn slope below. "Lowboy, I'm going outside," Cameron whispered to one of the watching men. Lowboy stared at Cameron's back as he clambered over the chest-high barricade of rocks that blocked the cave's entrance. Too high and steep, they hoped, for one of those things to get over, but just negotiable enough for a man. Lowboy wanted very much to burn a hole through Cameron. Sure, he was the leader, but only by default. No. They had to conserve the energy packs, and besides, those things might sense the energy release and come to investigate. Lowboy sincerely hated Cameron, if that was his real name. Nobody in the Red 35 crew ever went by his real name. He'd showed up at their headquarters a year ago, breathing hatred and vowing damnation upon the entire Confederation of Worlds, saying he wanted to join their band, offer them his services. Educated fop, that's what he was, Lowboy reflected, not real pirate material. But Scanlon had accepted him into the crew. Now look what that's got us, Lowboy thought bitterly. Outside, Cameron stood bathed in the moonlight as he urinated down the slope. They were nearly 1,000 meters above the swamp, and the mountains rose another 1,000 meters behind them. Those things didn't...